Welcome to Why It's So Bright at Night. I'm your host, Bill McGeaney. Why It's So Bright at Night is a periodic one-off show where we dive into an item that was in the news. You can find everything you need to know about light pollution news over at lightpollutionnews.com. Follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok. We're pretty much everywhere. And you can also find details and links in the show notes that we talk about today. So without further ado, let's get started on this Why It's So Bright at Night, Citizens for Responsible Lighting, Norfolk, Virginia, U.S. In our recent episode, Gucci Bag Deep State, I came across an article from WTKR3, which spoke about a Norfolk advocacy group that was looking to implement what author Jay Green termed eco-friendly street lighting. I reached out to the fine folks at Citizens for Responsible Lighting, and lucky for me, I'm joined by three, not just one, of their members. And with me today are Lori Bacanari, Joe Reynes, and Mary Frances Bellman. So thank you, folks, for joining me. Do I have all this correct?
You do.
To catch the listener up, Norfolk began down this path of retrofitting their streetlights with LED fixtures back in November of 2023. At the time, Norfolk received a $3 million grant, essentially, from the federal government here in the U.S. and had an initial cost estimate of $5 million. The streetlight conversion vendor was going to be the energy company, Dominion Energy. So before we met today, Lori, you were gracious enough to send over some documentation, some PowerPoints that you guys use when talking to community leaders. I was struck by something in the detail that wasn't really described well in any of the news pieces prior. And they're not really retrofitting the streetlights, but rather kind of plugging in LEDs, these 3,000 to 4,000 Kelvin LEDs in existing fixtures, including acorn and traditional kind of decorative street lighting, which from the pictures that you've shown over waterways or near residential is very extraordinarily bright. So why don't we start from the beginning? What are you guys able to tell me a little bit about who you are and why you came to this movement and what drove you to kind of go down this road?
So it started with an uber bright streetlight outside my house. My husband and I woke up one night thinking aliens were landing, or, you know, we were suddenly in the middle of a football field on Friday night. And that is how it got started. We are a group, a grassroots group of concerned citizens who want responsible lighting for our wonderful historic city of Norfolk. And I soon found out that this was part of a conversion plan for the city, and that I was also not the only one who was becoming aware of this as an issue. Lori was one of the first people that I reached out to through a mutual friend, and slowly but surely we realized that there were other concerned citizens. And that's kind of how we got started. Early on, we met with city officials and leadership to determine how best to meet our objectives of getting responsible lighting for the city. And we also started researching like crazy. As you and I have touched on, LED is a fast-moving technology, and it's changing so fast that Dominion Energy hasn't kept up with it. Our city officials are not lighting experts on this, and we aren't either, but we have learned a heck of a lot very quickly. We have our objective has been to work with the city and the various key decision makers in this process. And that has been one of public education and also education of those key city decision makers, as well as ourselves. And one of our biggest objectives is to get inserted in this process, design lighting experts, because that is lacking.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if you guys had any actual lighting designers or engineers in the organization itself?
We have come across companies through our research that we would recommend to the city, to VEPCA, another key player in this, and to Dominion Energy. And we think that because this is such a complicated, fast-moving technology, to spend money wisely to get the result of responsible lighting, they really need to step back and hire someone along those lines.
It's kind of, if I could, it's kind of scary in that when we're in the room with city officials and others, I have an engineering background, but I'm not an expert in light designing. They turn and look at Lori or they look at Mary Frances and me and go, "Well, you guys are the experts," and we're not. We're just concerned citizens that have thought this through. One of the challenges that I think that we found when we first came in was we're basing the lighting of the future on a system that wasn't grounded in giving good effects anyway. It was just lights on poles that were the easiest way to put it there. So there's no design on what the effect we want. So then, therefore, there's no consideration of the illumination, the distribution, and the color. And as we've noticed, people keep focusing on color, but it's actually the distribution and illumination that are as big a problem.
Oh yeah, color. I find here in major metropolitan area that color isn't terrible on a municipal level. It's more of the spray, right? It's the actual distribution of where the light is landing, and a lack of shielding, which you have to kind of fight and remind and fight tooth and nail with the municipal area just to get a shield up. Although it's doable, which I recommend you at home. The first course of action is to just make it known that you want shielding up. Before we go down too far into the weeds here, Joe, this organization, why don't you tell the listener at home how many people are in this organization? What's the demographic? Like, where are these people from? Who are part of this citizens organization in Norfolk?
And I'll have Mary Frances and Lori jump in. It started out when those ladies gave a brief along with Liz, and I joined. And at that time, there were like 6 of us that would come and meet in Mary Frances's house, and we talk about what we do and who we communicate. We've enlisted several council members. We've briefed the mayor. But I will tell you, last I looked, we've been over 30 different civic leagues and groups to be able to what I want to clarify, and I know Mary Frances and Lori will hit this, is we're not against LEDs. We just need the right light at the right time, and we haven't thought that through yet. Mary Frances or Lori?
Yes, we have. I think we're up over 40 plus now presentations. The one that we sent you, Bill, is the one that we made to the Architectural Review Board most recently. And it's an evolving presentation in response to people's questions and points. And so, we're majoring on human health, safety, and the environment as the key, responsible optimal lighting to achieve those 3 objectives. And safety is really important to us, as well as the environment and human health. As you probably saw in that presentation, if we're not careful, we really risk jeopardizing all 3. And we have a list of 5 key asks, and for us, we're making progress on those 5 key asks, getting people to adopt them. But it's a long haul, and it's a process of public education. People usually see our presentation and then they're enthusiastic, but the first response is, I had no idea.
Yeah, go ahead.
Your question, Bill, about how many members. So every time that we give this presentation to a different civic league, which we're giving at least 1 or 2 presentations a week, we seem to get new members that want to join our efforts. And we have probably over a dozen people just that are regular citizens like us And we all tend to have specialty roles. Like Joe has been working with the ARB, and we have one person that's really good at giving the presentation. So we have tended broken out into different specialties, depending on, what we're good at, and working with the city members. And so,
yeah, Mary, you hit on something that's really important. I think what you're simply asking for is more diligent perspective on how to implement the lighting. You're not asking for less light. You're not asking for taking away light from areas that need light. Not asking for taking away lighting that would essentially create feelings of like a lack of safety. You're not advocating for any of that. You're just saying, hey, if I have you right, you're just saying, hey, what we want to have is more thought out lighting. We want to have controlled spot. We want to have control over how that lighting actually comes down to the ground. I want to make sure that it's implemented in a way that isn't going to create additional hazards, isn't going to create health. And of course the environmental piece, which no one seems to really pay attention to, as I've discovered.
that is correct, yeah. Bill. Yeah. We know what we need in terms of, or we believe we know what we need in terms of CCT, which is 2,700 Kelvin or lower. And that's really key because we have 144 miles of coastal water in our city. And because we're a historic city, we are a mix of residential, commercial, and roads and waterways. So we think that for those environmentally sensitive areas, we need 2,400 Kelvin. But to Joe's earlier point, there are also the distribution, which you also touched on. We are pressing very hard for type 2 distribution, which minimizes the light trespass into people's homes and into the waterways. And we also are concerned about lumens, which is something that people haven't really touched on. That combination leads to the blue, a sort of overall lighting effect that Joe talks about in blue spectral content. In terms of the environment, we can demonstrate the impact on tadpoles, for instance. You may have seen that slide. It really negatively impacts our wildlife, and we're on a migratory path, so that's absolutely critical. But it also creates disability glare and disability discomfort. So it's not as safe as brighter is not necessarily better. There is no safety correlation that brighter is better. In fact, we can demonstrate that brighter makes it more difficult to see safely in a nighttime situation. Your eyes are just not constructed to handle those bright lights. In fact, they're designed to adjust to the darkness and warmer lighting. And the DoD has known this for a long time. Joe can speak to this personally. The DoD has stopped using those brighter lights and uses amber lights for their personnel safety. And human health, we have seen a correlation. We've picked up in our research a correlation with many modern diseases like dementia, Alzheimer's, breast cancer, prostate cancer, obesity, and the list goes on. So it's important that the city get this right. You mentioned shields. Shields definitely perform a function when there needs to be a retro correction, but we would way rather the city lead with a type 2 distribution because the shield process in our city is absolutely torturous. You have to get your whole city block to agree with you, to petition one man in our city, and then he has to agree with you, and then he contacts Dominion, and then Dominion puts in a whole new luminaire with a shield on it, and the city of Norfolk pays for that process. So you can imagine that a lot of citizens would just give up.
In most new modern fixtures, shielding is absurdly cheap. It's absurdly cheap. It's not expensive at all. It's amazing that you would have to go through such a process. Just
and Bill, And maybe you can educate us here a little bit. One of the concerns that we've had with shielding is that we've seen some types of shielding that are just the attach-on shielding, but a strong winds, a storm comes through, and you have to go out and reset all the shielding. Have you seen that as a challenge in your discussion?
I've seen that. I haven't seen the effects because I don't know of too many places that have those shields. But I assume because they just dangle. I think I know the ones you're talking about. They're triangle dangles, and that they would be, and when you have a heavy wind, it's just going to affect it.
Yes. I think that's that's fixing the symptom, not going back to the problem, and we've just really got to think about lighting now as a design process for the effect that you're looking for at that street, at that industry, at that house, and at that waterway. And I know it's going to be more complicated, but it's something that we owe it to our children and our grandchildren versus getting this wrong.
Yeah, this is a generational opportunity because these lights last and last and last. And there is one thing, Bill, we haven't discussed, which is quite critical to all of this, which is adaptive controls. That is an existing technology. It is an integral part of a lot of the luminaires that our city would purchase. And it allows that flexibility for task-specific lighting. In our city, not all communities have the same needs, but the city could buy lights with adaptive controls, and that would allow them to tailor the lighting without having to buy hundreds of different lights for different needs. They could buy a handful of lighting with adaptive controls and then tailor things.
So, Mary, you mentioned you guys have met at about 30 different meetings or 30 different presentations. You met with all the public officials in town. You're asking them essentially to take on a lot of expense.
Actually, we're not. What we know is a 2,700 Kelvin luminaire doesn't cost, with type 2 distribution, doesn't cost any more than the 3,000 and 4,000 Kelvin lights with type 3 distribution. There is a certain sort of prejudice at the outset that this would cost more, but it doesn't. And it's been a case of trying to persuade Dominion to move off their 2017 playbook. That's the set of technology that that's the playbook that they're operating with, 2016, 2017 information, what we knew about LED lighting then. But we know from talking to their suppliers and other suppliers that these options are available and it's not cost prohibitive.
In fact, we're avoiding the cost. If we get this right now, we won't have to retrofit like Davis, California, or other cities in Connecticut. That's what we're trying to do. Avoid the cost replacement.
Getting it will be expensive.
I think the issue comes down to we've convinced the city to do what's right, but they cannot get that technology from our energy company because the energy company is not offering it yet.
Do you guys think that's because the energy company just has a whole bunch of inventory that they're sitting on? They're not incentivized to do anything until the inventory is gone?
Hey, Francis, I will let you take that because you and I know how we've discussed this a lot.
Well, something we haven't mentioned, Bill, which is quite important to all of this, is our statewide coalition. That's been something that we have brought together as part of this. Our city officials said, look, Dominion Energy does not make more than this very small list available to us to purchase. And they will tell us no if we ask for more than is on this shopping list. And so if you can get Dominion's other customers also on board, that would help us with our conversations with them. And so there were other people in the state who were thinking very much like us and already advocating. So we all came together and we formed a statewide coalition under the leadership of Laura Greenleaf, and who has a successful history with Dark Sky International. it has been really, really useful because the contract negotiations with Dominion happen through a board called VEPGA, VEPGA. And they represent the different municipalities that use Dominion Energy as their supplier. And so all the contract negotiations go through this board. And what has been very rewarding is that the VEPCA members of the board have listened to the different municipalities, and they are now adopting many of the things that we're asking for as points of negotiation for the next contract with Dominion Energy.
Oh, interesting. Well, that's a way to do it. That's a good roadmap right there. If you're in a community or you're having an issue similar to what you guys do, there's a lot of towns out there doing these retrofits. I mean, you have places like Atlanta, which is essentially trying to bomb the city with lighting, and you have places that in Colorado that are trying to do a smart implementation right off the bat. I guess if you're a grassroots individual and you're concerned about your community, how would you go about, what's the best place to start in trying to address some of these concerns?
Well, I would say Lori and I started talking to each other, and then we reached out to other people that we knew. And Lori was fantastic in, getting a meeting with our city officials. And both of us started talking to our city councilors, and we found some city councilors who were absolutely on board and helped advocate for us to get in front of more city officials. And we have it's conversations, it's education. And we would be very happy to help out if somebody wanted to reach out to us, especially if they're in the state of Virginia, where their efforts can help our efforts.
How could people reach out to you guys?
So we have, actually, I don't have it in front of me. Lori, do you have our CR?
We do have an Instagram, we have a Facebook, and we have an email. And Bill, you sent an email to me. So what is our email address? I think it's crl_Norfolk@gmail.com.
That's what I should. I think the Instagram and the Facebook also reference the Citizens for Responsible Lighting.
Yes, and we have our Instagram is CRL_Norfolk.
Excellent. Joe, you're going to say something before I ask for how people could reach out.
It is more than the grassroots, and we've struggled with a little bit of, people have asked us, hey, you should start a petition. And I think one of the key things that made us successful in Norfolk was that we really tried to work with the city and the elected officials and do this as a combination of teamwork and partnership versus becoming adversarial. We haven't finished yet, so hopefully we can carry that through. But I think that made a difference from their point of view. It wasn't that we were attacking them or moving towards an adversarial relationship, but that we wanted to work to a common goal that was best for everyone. And I thank Mary Frances and Lori and Liz and all the team for keeping us focused on that, working together. And I think that's paid off well.
Joe, how was it, just out of curiosity, how hard was it to keep everyone focused on that? I feel like, people get very, I had Stephanie Vermillion on a while back, and she wrote some great travel, she's big into noctourism and astro-tourism. And she was talking about it up in Cleveland, in Ohio, where she lived, and how people get embittered by these things, but they don't seem to have a way to convey that in a constructive manner. So was it difficult as you guys, as a core, being able to keep focused on that and not have someone go a little off the rails?
Yes, a little bit, I would say. And we've had those discussions before about staying positive, staying focused, staying on what our in state is, excuse me. But I will tell you, Mary Frances, Lori, Liz, the others, we stayed focused on that, and we tried to reinforce each other with that positive message. And I think it has really carried through, especially at things like our architectural review board, and in our meetings with the mayor. But it's been that knife edge that you go, do we try to take this to a, each of the citizens and get their voice heard? Or do we continue to work together for their interest? And I think that working together has paid off, but we're not over the finish line yet. I think we can see the finish line, and I'll leave it to Mary Frances to keep me online or correct.
Joe is right. We have not got there yet. And Bill, you highlight that constant tension of, advocacy, and then it's 2 steps forward and 1 step back. And it does require our collegial supportive team to keep us on track, because sometimes there is an element of frustration. I'll be completely honest. But it does seem like, we've kept our eye on the prize, and we're not there yet. We really, really have been encountering some resistance with some of the key decision makers that we've referenced. We will keep at it, though, because this is just so important to the generations to come, not just us.
I want to thank you, Mary Frances. We have Mary Frances Bellum, Lori Bacanari, and Joe Reynos here from the Citizens for Responsible Lighting in Norfolk, Virginia, in the U.S. Thanks for all the work, guys. I know it's a lot. I know it's stressful. I know it's dedication. Sometimes it's like you're just yelling at the wall. So, it takes perseverance and I guess, maybe you guys can form a drinking club outside of doing this. But
we already have.
Well, I want to thank you guys again for coming on the show. And if you want to learn more about Citizens for Responsible Lighting, you can head on out to their website. It will be in the show notes, and give them some questions. They'll definitely help you out. So
thank you, Bill.
Yep. If you wish to learn more about light pollution news, what we do here, feel free to jump over to our website at lightpollutionnews.com, where you'll find all of our helpful tips, our bi-monthly episode links, narratives, a page where you can find all of the documents on ecology-related news that you'll ever want. And feel free to reach out to us on social media, Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, Facebook, more. And you can listen to the show wherever you find podcasts. Be sure to subscribe or follow the show, whatever the app says to do. Thank you once more. I'm your host, Bill McGeaney, reminding you to only shine a light where it's needed.